This chapter introduces the concept of object-oriented programming using classes. A class can be defined in a lot of ways, but a simple way to define it is as a user-defined data type. Rather than bombard you with a lot of technical details and philosophies about why classes are used and how to create them and what all the different pieces of a class are called, what I thought I'd do is just give you a simple example to start. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a name class that allows a program to work with a person's whole name. So to do that, we start off by moving up to the global area of our program and create the class by typing in the keyword class followed by the name of the class, which in this case is name. It's going to be hard to type this in without colliding with other objects that are part of the environment. So we'll put this curly brace right there. A curly brace signifies the beginning of a class body, just like it does for a function body or a for body or any type of body of a construct. Classes are usually broken up into two parts, a public part and a private part. In further lessons, I'll discuss in more detail why we break them up like that, but for now, I just wanted to introduce that idea to you. We're going to start with the private section of the class first, and in that section, we're going to place the variables that will store the data for our class. A class is different from a built-in data type because not only does it store data, but it also stores operations in the same entity. Think about an integer variable, for example. An integer variable will store just a whole number in the variable name itself, and then any operations that are performed on that variable, like addition or subtraction, are performed outside of the variable. In a class, we have both the data and the operations in one place. That provides lots of advantages in large programs, and we'll discuss those as we go through this chapter. But for now, we just want to work with a simple name class, so all we need for the data are the three pieces of a name, the first, the middle, and the last name. Now we'll define the public section of the class, and that will include the interface. And the interface is the way that a user of the class interacts with the class. Think of it mostly in terms of functions. So a name class might have a function for setting the different parts of a name or for retrieving the initials of a name. We're going to look at just two functions in this example. One that's called a constructor function, which I'm defining now, which allows us to put data into a class object when we create it. So I'm writing three parameters for this constructor: fname for first name, mname for middle name, and lname for last name. And then the body will just simply be assignment statements where we take the parameters and assign them to the variables we declared above, like so. Then we're also going to create a function that returns the data stored in an object. This will be a string function. We're going to call it toString, which is a standard name for a function that does this particular task. And it will consist of just a return statement that returns the first name, concatenated with the middle name and a space, and then the last name with a space first. And that's all we're going to do for this simple example. So we'll close the class definition, which involves typing a closing curly brace and a semicolon. The compiler looks for the semicolon to indicate that the class definition is over. So once we've defined the class, then we can use it in a program. And the way we create a class declaration is by typing the name of the class, just like we would any other data type, followed by the object name we want to give. In this case, we're going to call it my name. And then because we have a constructor that allows us to pass in the first, middle, and last name when we declare the object, we'll do it now. You can also create more than one constructor so that you don't pass in any data or just pieces of the name, say the first name and the last name, or just the last name. And we'll look at all those examples as we go through this chapter. So here I've called the constructor with the three parts of my name. Now we want to see how that works, so we're going to call the toString function. Notice how the editor picks up the fact that toString is defined for name. So we'll write it in like so, and then have a new line at the end. Let's build and run the program. And we see that my name stores Michael Mason McMillan. So there's an example of a simple class definition. There's quite a bit more to it than that. But rather than, bore you with a PowerPoint with lots of terminology you don't understand, I thought the best way to start would be with a simple example. In the following lessons in this chapter, we're going to develop a date class in some detail. So in the next video, we're going to look at just the beginnings of defining a date class, including what data needs to be stored and whether we want to make that public or private.